really wonderful to be here with you all again. And I'm seeing a lot of familiar names and faces now, which is kind of fun. But for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Kirsten, and I've been I've been I, I've been taking a long break from living in Nevada City now. It's been perhaps almost close to a year. I'm up in the Northwest, but that area has been my home for a little bit. And now I'm currently living with my sister up here in the Northwest. So it's just good to be part of this Sangha, even remotely. And oh, is that a turn up the volume? How's my volume? It's okay? Okay, great. Yeah. So I wanted to talk today about belonging, belonging and connection. And this was inspired, this talk was inspired because this week I also teach a Buddhist Eco-Chaplaincy training program with teachers you might know, Gil Fronsdell and Susie Harrington. That's through the Sati Center in Redwood City, California. And so we had a 2-day online retreat, and we've been emphasizing these 4 human needs through a lens of chaplaincy, really. And we're using eco-chaplaincy as a lens, but it's if you consider a chaplain as one who really is providing spiritual support and care for those who are struggling or celebrating, going through rites of passage, looking for connection, looking for solace. So these 4 kind of areas of contribution that we consider chaplains offering can be considered. And again, it's just one lens, but the first, belonging and community, belonging and community. And then just to give you the rest of them, we talk about healing and reconciliation, meaning and purpose, and dignity and worth. But we spent a lot of time this last week reflecting on belonging, particularly in the context of eco-chaplaincy and Buddhist eco-chaplaincy. But it made me really reflect more deeply on this question of what is it to belong to the world, to belong to each other, to belong to ourselves. And I was pointing to this a little bit in the guided meditation, that line from the Majjhima Nikaya of the Buddha of develop meditation like the earth. And that's a line that I've really also sat with quite a bit. And, I don't know precisely what the Buddha implied when he spoke those words. But for me, there is something about the earth and its unconditional acceptance that infuses in me a sense of a very deep belonging, of connection. So I was pointing to that a bit in the meditation. I'm not sure how that landed for you, but we'll have some time for some dialogue. So if anyone wants to share, I'd be very curious. So I thought, we could even begin with just a minute maybe of silence, of asking into that silence, who are we and what is it to belong? And I was thinking of these 3 areas of belonging to the world, belonging to each other, belonging to ourselves. What does that feel like in ourselves, in our being? And as I sit here and I sort of tune into that question, I feel my breath, I feel myself being breathed. And there is something so intrinsic about the breath as this reminder of connection, that we're moved by this breath that comes into these bodies and out of these bodies and into other bodies and through through the world. And that the breath is a kind of power and agency that moves through us too. And so there's a sort of individual expression that comes through this sense of connection. And that even in sitting practice, I think about this expression of our dignity somehow, this embodiment of this connection to everything and this unique individual expression. This way that we're part of the whole, this individual expression of the whole. So I'm not sure if any of you know this. Maybe I've mentioned it to Marcia and Jen, I'm not sure, but I have an identical twin sister, and we're very close. So that's who I'm living with right now. I've had so many health challenges in the past year, and so it's been a real blessing to be with someone, spend some time again. It's been 20 years since we've lived in the same town, and to be with someone who I'm this close to at a time that feels challenging for me physically. So, but I mentioned that I'm a twin because for me, I've been asked so many times throughout my life, what's it like being a twin? And I'd say that most of the time, my kind of flippant answer is always, I don't know what it's like not being a twin. What's it like not being a twin? It's hard to extract oneself from one's own personal conditioning, right? But I can also say in like that personally, and again, there are probably countless twins who do not share this experience, my experience of being a twin, but there is something very unique for me about feeling so deeply connected to someone. And in some ways, I mean, uncannily similar, like uncanny in way, like we have, sometimes we'll have the same dreams, we'll eat the same lunches unbeknownst to each other on the same day, just odd things. I mean, we have the same DNA. And so there's something that's growing up in a sort of very individualistic culture. That was a little disconcerting for, I think, both of us. And probably one reason that we have spent the last 20 years apart is because it can be very refreshing to not be seen as a double, to have a sort of unique expression of life in the world. And we do. We're very different in our own ways. And yet, it's so clear that we come from the same source, that there's this real deep connection that we share that does not diminish the individuality of our own personal expression. And yet, growing up a twin also, I've experienced so many times the real pain, actually, the painful ways in which being an individual is conflated with comparison. So comparison, better, worse, good, bad, whose nose is bigger, who's taller, who's the better athlete, who's the better mathematician. I mean, these were the kinds of messages that she and I constantly received, stand back to back. Oh, wow, you have more wrinkles. You have this, that's very different than really a recognition of individual expression, unique expression in the world. And I point to that because there's also a way in which, as we're practitioners here and we practice and we realize the limitation of the I, the limitation of me, myself, I, being somehow isolated and alone in the world, when really, just as our breath so simply and eloquently demonstrates, we are relational beings. We're fundamentally connected. We are inseparable from one another. And yet, we're these individual expressions. And yet, when we take those individual expressions of our own selves and then pit them against one another, that's a recipe for suffering. That's dukkha right there. Is the praise and the blame, the shame and the fame, all of those kind of polarities that the Buddha spoke about, that to get off of that kind of train of polarities, there's freedom there when we can just rest in our own being. Not sure if any of you know about Martha Graham, who is a really incredible choreographer, dance teacher. But she has she was quoted as saying this. It's kind of a long passage, but I just think it's so beautiful and speaks to this theme. She says, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable or how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive." So this queer, divine dissatisfaction, I've sat a lot with that too. I mean, what does that mean? And I think about this dichotomy that we have, for not wanting things to change. I mean, this is what we see again and again in our practice. There's this way in which either we really want things to change, right, or we don't. We want to stay healthy. We want to stay young. We want to keep our relationships the way they are, perhaps if they're in a good place, or we're trying to get somewhere where we're not currently. I mean, these are quite clearly the sources of dukkha, of suffering, of not being both able to be with things as they are, and also not recognizing fully the impermanence of things. That when we assume that things are permanent, we suffer because they change. So this queer divine dissatisfaction, this is how I'm translating this, and Martha Graham might very much protest, but I'm taking liberties. So this blessed unrest, a blessed unrest, like that there's always this change happening that keeps us marching and makes us more alive. And so what this keeps us marching, and I think about this as it keeps us bringing what we have to offer into the world. It's like it keeps us, what are some of her words? Like keeping the channel open, not blocking our expression, our unique expressions it's constant, and they're constantly responding to the impermanence of things, to the constant changing of phenomena in our lives. And so the more familiar and comfortable we get with a world that is slipping away from us, the more we can actually be like marching into this unknown with this like aliveness. And it can be quite disconcerting and scary, and there can be a lot of grief and loss, and there can also be a lot of curiosity and excitement. It's all of the things. But then the question too is like, well, who am I in this next moment? How is this expression of life uniquely moving through me in this next moment? Like, we really don't know. Yeah. So belonging, I am speaking here about belonging. And, I think so much of my work, I teach Eco-Chaplaincy. It's very earth-based. I'm very committed to really crafting and recrafting and forming relationships with the more than human world, and recognizing our interdependence with this just precious earth that we are so gifted by every day and are so part of. And that's like one way in which it's just so, it's such a way that we can be reminded of our belonging, that the food that we eat is from this earth, that we're made up of elements of this earth, that our inspiration and our respiration is all part and parcel of this earth, that these reciprocal ways in which we are so clearly earth beings made of earth, that we exist due to these relationships with elements, with plants and animals and minerals, and that alone is a way we can maybe even sense like our belonging in things. Like, how could we not belong? That we are made of the same stuff. We're like made and breathed by the same stuff that is in everything. Joanna Macy, who's one of my longtime guides and mentors, teachers, she's a Buddhist teacher, eco-feminist, has done a lot of work around grief and these times of ecological collapse. She talks about acting your age, and this is what she says about acting your age. She says, since every particle in your body goes back to the first flaring forth of space and time, you're really as old as the universe. So when you're lobbying at your congressperson's office, or visiting your local utility, or testifying at a hearing on nuclear waste, or standing up to protect an old grove of redwoods, you're doing that not out of some personal whim, but in the full authority of your 15 billion years. Just as I was reflecting earlier on, we just don't know how the expression is going to be in this next moment. I all of a sudden got this hit of a 15 billion year trajectory, maybe longer, of not knowing where that next moment of life force is going to come from, what it's going to do. So there's something too about, this belonging to the earth, and this recognizing this like unique agency and expression that comes through each one of us, that we can also lean into the everything. That this again, this is for me is this feeling of belonging, of connection, that the earth really gives us this stability and this capacity that lets us know that we don't have to do it alone, that we can lean, we can rest. And again, those were like the two sides of the meditation that I was leading, is like, oh, this earth that supports us. And then what is it to also be that support, that unconditional sense of acceptance. Yeah. So that not having to do it alone and leaning in, there's also a reciprocity there. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's a Potawatomi writer and biologist, she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. She wrote that knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond. Knowing that you love the earth changes you. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond. And that's what belonging does. That's exactly it. It's reciprocal. It's like being held and then holding in return. I was just this afternoon going for a walk with a friend in Portland here, and he was pointing out one of those trees, and he calls it, and I've heard it. This is not. I don't think this is its real name, but it's like a monkey puzzle tree. It looks kind of like a Dr. Seuss tree. And he said that he'd heard that this tree is sacred for the Chilean people, indigenous people of Chile. And I was just thinking about that in context of what I was wanting to talk with you about, that, here's this being, that there's this sacred bond, that Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about with a tree and these people, and that there's it's not a one-way street, that there's a way in which the tree is, in that relationship and making that relationship legible. It's like the earth changes you, you change the earth loves you, you love the earth. There's a relationship that's a sacred bond there. And what would that be, to have more of that in our own lives? Mother Teresa, she wrote that if we have no peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. I think about that in the context of those trees too. That what is it to really recognize that we belong to each other? And it relates in many ways, I think, to refuge. And I've spoken about refuge here before with you all. I think I had a talk on it. But it reflects the support that we have. Refuge does, and that we don't have to do it alone. When we take refuge in the Buddha, whether it's the figure of the Buddha who was awake in the world, or our own Buddha nature, refuge in the Dharma and the teachings and the way things are, refuge in Sangha and spiritual teachers, friends, that we are really being supported. I mean, fully supported in our practice and in our lives. And there was a teacher, I don't remember who it was now, so I apologize because I'm citing her. I know it was a woman without using her name, but she was remarking that she believes that taking refuge is being refuge. To take refuge is to be refuge. And I think of that too in the context of reciprocity, in the context of belonging. That, when we take refuge in the Buddha, in the Sangha, in the Dharma, when we take refuge in that which is home, keeps us feeling a sense of stability, of home, of belonging, perhaps, that we're also making ourselves a refuge for others. And in this practice, I've seen it again and again, you know, how much support each practitioners really give to the world. I mean, through your practice. I mean, I don't know if each one of you recognizes what a gift to the world you are in practicing this path of presence, of being present. It's you in that way are being refuge for others. You really are refuge for others who see the truth, who are able to take comfort in one who doesn't need things to be different, doesn't need you to be different. It's an incredible gift. So belonging and how we know this, how we know our belonging. So I mentioned earth connection, refuge, taking refuge through connection with one another, good friends, Dharma friends, Kalyanamita, spiritual friendships. The Buddha considered spiritual friendships as paramount to the spiritual path, that associating with wise people is one of the requirements for stream entry. That's the first level of awakening. So really that, being with good friends and good spiritual relationships and having our lives blessed by good people, that this is another way that we can tune into that feeling of belonging. Ajahn Sucitto described Kalyanamita, spiritual friendship, as not just a matter of friendship, but about a shared commitment to values that don't harm or exploit others. A shared commitment to values that don't harm or exploit others. And that might sound maybe not so powerful, but really to be with others where we can be and take refuge. Like that right there is a real invitation into soaking in that feeling of connection and belonging. In the Eco-Chaplaincy training, actually, and this is a chaplaincy, I use the word eco-chaplain because that's what I teach, and yet I'm guessing most of you would ask me what eco-chaplaincy is, because that's what everyone does when I say I teach a Buddhist eco-chaplaincy training program, and that's not the nature of this talk, so I'll just stick with chaplaincy. But chaplaincy, and maybe some of you are chaplains out there or have been, but one of the biggest offerings that a chaplain can provide is being a listener, like just an unconditional, kind, loving, listening presence. It's like one of the top the top gifts of a chaplain, highest gifts, that unconditional, earth-like presence of just deep listening, deep care. And that, again, it feels so good. It feels so good to receive that, because we really can feel like we belong, like we are connected and we belong. Sebene Selassie, who's a Buddhist teacher, she wrote a whole book on belonging, actually. It's a beautiful book. And she describes belonging as an imperative. And she says, be longing. So she splits the word up, be longing. Our desire to belong is what makes us human, precisely because feeling like we don't belong opens us to belonging. I just think this is amazing, right? Our desire to belong is what makes us human, precisely because feeling like we don't belong opens us to belonging. If we didn't long for it, our species would have perished. our longing to belong is, as Irish poet David Whyte says, one of our core competencies. She says, try it right now. Connect to any ways you feel you don't fit in, aren't accepted, or are separate. Can you sense that longing for connection? Is there a part of you that knows the universality of that longing? Can you recognize the humanness of that desire? So these ways that we can tune into belonging, like again, through reciprocity with the earth, with recognizing our own beings as earth beings, through connecting with one another and Kalyanamita, and then to even recognize our longing to belong, that humanness of that desire is what can actually create a sense of connection with others, because we know that we're not alone in that longing. I find that like so paradoxically beautiful. Yeah. Like we don't have to get ourselves out of feeling like we don't belong to belong somehow, right? It's just amazing. Another gift of this practice is, it really points to inner belonging. Like can we, despite all conditions, feel a sense of belonging in our own selves? And I think, and I'll speak to the inner belonging again in a moment, but I think that it also then, the more acquainted we get with a sense of inner belonging, with what it is to feel a sense of belonging in our own selves, that then we know more about how we can create conditions that feel more inclusive, that feel more welcoming, that feel safer for more people. I think that the more we acquaint ourselves with what it feels like to belong, the more we can create those outer conditions, the more we can become a refuge. And that can be, one-on-one, that can be in groups and facilitating groups. I mean, there's so many ways in which the unique expressions of human lives, these unique expressions of the wholeness that, we have histories of prejudice, of exclusion, of ignoring, of rendering invisible some bodies. So the more that we are able to explore our own belonging, I do believe the more we become better skilled at creating and facilitating spaces that include all bodies, all beings. So the more we know our inner belonging, the more we can provide this refuge of outer belonging. And one way that, another way, I've spoken about a few ways, but of really feeling into that inner belonging is recognizing the changing of this body and the changing of conditions. Can I be a refuge to myself? Can I be at home and at peace with a body that is aging, and a body that will get ill, a body that will die? These are the heavenly messengers that the Buddha spoke of. And what is it to really belong in a world that is impermanent, as I spoke to in the beginning? So, I spoke in the beginning of the 4 human needs of the chaplain, and beginning with belonging and community, which is what I spoke of, this evening. But then the other 3, the healing and reconciliation, the meaning and purpose, and the dignity and worth, I think all of those stem from a grounding in the sense of belonging. All of them require that as our foundation, our refuge. Maybe I'll speak to some of those in future talks. That might be fun to explore. So looks like I'm about out of time. I thought I would actually end with just a portion of a poem from Joy Harjo, who was the first Indigenous poet laureate of the US. I think she's an extraordinary poet, but it's called Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings. And I was thinking this was an appropriate one in the context of tonight's theme of belonging and connection. So this is just number 4. She has a list of 6 things. Reduce defensiveness and break the defensiveness chain. She says, I could hear the light beings as they entered every cell. Every cell is a house of the God of light, they said. I could hear the spirits who love us stomp dancing. They were dancing as if they were here, and then on another level of here, and then another, until the whole earth and sky was dancing. We are here dancing, they said. There was no there. There was no I or you. There was us. There was we. There we were, as if we were the music. You cannot legislate music to lockstep, nor can you legislate the spirit of the music to stop at political boundaries, or poetry, or art, or anything that is of value or matters in this world and the next worlds. This is about getting to know each other. We will wind up back at the blues, standing on the edge of the flatted fifth, about to jump into a fierce understanding together. Thank you so much for your kind attention. And we have about 10-ish minutes for any reflections or questions or insights. I'd love to hear. Oh, I think Priscilla, you unmuted and then muted again.
Unmute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. It was really, really beautiful. It just it felt, it felt almost like warm and cozy, but it was, it was just very, very physical, the experience listening to you.
Hmm.
And I wanted to ask you about the reference to the developed meditation like the earth. What is the reference for that, the Buddha? I mean, I'd like to be able to read, more about what he said regarding that.
Yeah, the context, right? Yeah, it's from the Majjhima Nikaya, and it's number, hang on, I'll be able to find it in just one second. It's oh, I had it up just a second ago. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I put it. I will find it.
Is that a sutta? I mean, is that available to buy, the Majjhima Nikaya?
Yeah, you can buy it. You can also look it up online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it the spelling, I guess, is what is it Majjimanakaya?
Oh my gosh. Oh goodness. Hang on. It's Majjhimanikaya. It's from the middle link discourses. I'll put it in the chat. And although I'm not sure, can I do everyone? I'll do it. I'll give it to Marcia, and then Marcia can send it along. And I am going to find the number for you, though, just because I have it. And then you can look it up easily. You could probably just look that up, like plug it into Google.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna give it, I'll put that one, I'll put the number into the chat. 62.13.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Somebody having this image of you following your mother around, cleaning as she cooked, it's hysterical. Yeah, I would be standing at the sink right now washing dishes and pots and pans. And she would, one would get dirty and I would go over and get it, go back to the sink.
Somebody's microphone is on. I'm also happy to, I'm happy to sit here with you all too for some remaining time. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kirsten, I wonder if you would revisit the quote from Catherine Graham?
Yeah, Martha Graham.
Martha Graham, yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you want me to read it aloud or would you like me to put it into the chat?
Gosh, I think I'd like to hear you read it aloud again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
you.
Okay, so she said, there is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. There is only a queer divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did it resonate for you?
Yeah, I also really loved your reference to stomp dancing. That's one of my favorite ways to dance. So I was like, oh, that's what that's called. Far out. It's all coming together right this second.
Oh, I love it.
I think some other people on this call were in the Sunday dance in town, and that's another sweet sense of belonging, I must say. So
Yeah.
thank you for referencing all these ladies who dance. That's just a very cool shared practice also.
Yeah, it's such a good one. I've really lost touch with it because of COVID
Mhm.
for the last few years now, but dance has been a regular practice of mine, community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kristen, thank you so much. That last quote really hung with me as well, especially the dissatisfaction part,
Mm.
which is something I struggle with. And kind of the balance of the sense of enoughness and recognizing things for how they are is in conflict with me with that sense of dissatisfaction.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can very much relate. I remember one of my earliest retreats and I felt like I was getting really quiet and there was this subterranean, like something's not right. Like just this kind of really subtle, constant, like, no, like dissatisfaction that you're describing, right? And Yeah, I think part of that sometimes is pointing to a longing for freedom, for like a kind of wholesome, like not wanting to be complacent here. And then there's also a kind of deep conditioning that we all receive of somehow things aren't okay, that they need to be different somehow. Something needs to be modified, right? Which is where we really, in practice, we start to develop more and more capacity to let go of that. I'm not sure if I'm exactly speaking to your experience, but just riffing off of what you shared.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, maybe we should move into announcements, or wait, do we do the meta before announcements? I can't remember. We do. Okay, well then great. I'll keep on going. So maybe we can spend a few moments to dedicate the merit of our time together. Yeah, and maybe I'll actually, in ending, I'll share another quotation that I didn't share in the talk that I was considering. So taking a moment to drop in again and connect with our inner sense of belonging, of connection, with a sense of aliveness, of presence, awareness, refuge, whatever it is that really allows us to feel that sense of belonging. And this quotation is from Tokapa Turner, who also wrote a book on belonging, and she wrote that true happiness depends upon our reciprocity with the environment in which we are embedded and unto which we are indebted. Our negligence of that reciprocity is, more than any other factor, what fosters unbelonging. It is at the root of loneliness, because without the greater intelligence of the mission coursing through our veins, making our purpose meaningful, we are but isolated bodies going through empty motions. And so in contrast to that, as we practice together and sit together, we recognize that we are not isolated bodies, but connected bodies, and we're going through full motions of interbeing and learning and deepening. And may the merit of our time together, of this practice of becoming refuge, of taking refuge, of being refuge for others, may it be of benefit to all beings. May all beings everywhere in all directions be safe, be happy, experience a deep sense of well-being, of peacefulness, of connection and belonging to themselves and to the world.